Good evening from Raleigh, North Carolina on this Labor Day 2018. It's Monday, September the 3rd. Recording this video shortly after 5:55 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And I wanted to wait until the latest advisories from the National Hurricane Center that came out at 5 o'clock to get the most updated information on the two active tropical cyclones that we're watching. Tropical Storm Gordon that you see in front of you, and Tropical Storm Florence, which is thousands of miles away in the open Atlantic, but that we have to still watch as it may have a bearing on North Carolina's weather or the east coast of the U.S.'s weather in the coming days, in about a week and a half or so. So something to watch, but it seems like, September came around and all of a sudden the tropics just came to life. And it is a climatological peak of hurricane season in the Atlantic, but it seems like they waited till September and all of a sudden it, kind of became really active. And now we have two active tropical cyclones to watch. So the first of which is Tropical Storm Gordon, which you see in front of you. And it has no bearing on North Carolina's weather, will not impact North Carolina in any way, but it's important to look at what kind of weather is going on around North Carolina because that directly influences what happens in North Carolina. So it's important to, to understand what's going on because that directly, weather's interconnected. So if Tropical Storm Gordon, intensifies into the hurricane that it's expected to become, it may have, even if it's slight, it's still going to have effects on weather, downwind of it. So it's important to know what's going on around you instead of just or in addition to what's going on just over your head. So just keep that in mind, when looking. It's always important, even if a hurricane's making landfall somewhere else, it might have impacts on your weather downwind. So it's interesting to look at that. But with that aside, wanted to look here at the visible satellite imagery of Tropical Storm Gordon. Currently packing maximum sustained winds of 50 miles per hour, and it's really getting that tropical look, that, counterclockwise rotation, kind of getting wound up. And 24 hours ago, it was just a tropical depression, a cluster of unorganized thunderstorms over Andros Island down here in the Bahamas, and it scooted and barely clipped the southern tip of Florida, and is currently in this location. Tampa's up here for reference, so about 60, 70 miles south of Tampa. But as it continues, on its west-northwest track, it's expected to go over the open waters here, and it's supposed to kind of wrap up into a minimal hurricane before making a landfall up here in Biloxi, Mississippi, Lake Pontchartrain area, somewhere in here. I'll show you on the National Hurricane Center advisory map areas where it could make a landfall, but it's expected to make a landfall as it keeps going west-northwest. There's nowhere for it to go except the Gulf Coast. So something to watch. And if we switch over to infrared here, we can see how it's kind of evolved through the day. And these warmer colors show high cloud tops. So the higher the cloud tops, is stronger the updraft, stronger the thunderstorm activity. And we really saw that this morning with the kind of a blob of thunderstorm activity up here. And as it kind of re-emerged out over the Gulf of Mexico here in the warmer waters, it's really getting its act together and looking more impressive. More recent scans maybe not so much, but it should be kept at bay because if you look up here, the clouds are moving southward, so there's a component of northerly wind shear here, and it's blowing directly against the direction that Tropical Storm Gordon is going. So that is a good thing because it is kind of going to keep the storm at bay in intensity wise, at least it's forecast to do so. And it is moving over some of the warmest waters in the Atlantic Basin and the Gulf of Mexico, but it's not expected to spend a whole lot of time over it. Expected to make a landfall early Wednesday morning or late tomorrow night. So it's not spending as much time as it could when it could really get its act together. So it should kind of skirt across here rather quickly and make landfall as a hurricane. But with small systems like this, we do have to keep an eye on it because it's prone to really rapid changes in intensity or structure, or it could really rapidly weaken as well. With it being a smaller system, it's easier to move around. It's easier to be influenced by the environmental conditions around it. If it's a bigger system, it's much harder to kind of influence that. So something to watch as we go forward, kind of the big weather story as of now. And if we go over to the National Hurricane Center's website, always go here for your official forecast. There's no need to get forecasts from other places because all the information you need is right here. If you're ever making decisions about evacuations or preparations, the National Hurricane Center is where you need to go. So we have Florence out here, which I'll touch on in just a few minutes, and then we have Gordon sitting just off the southwest coast of Florida. You can see the forecast track here. Here's its current location, and these dots are each about 12 hours apart or so. So this S represents tropical storm intensity. This is at 8 a.m. tomorrow, and then or actually it's maybe 2 a.m. this morning, and then 2 p.m. tomorrow afternoon, and then 2 a.m. Wednesday. So, in just about 36 hours or so, it'll be making landfall. And this red color is for the hurricane warnings, blues for tropical storm warnings. So they're already hoisted for those areas. So if you have loved ones in that area, make sure they're prepared for a landfalling hurricane. And the main story with this again is the rainfall. With it being a faster moving system, the wind is certainly a threat and power outages are a threat, but the main thing is just the rainfall, because it's going to be drawing from that Gulf moisture, shown here in the Gulf of Mexico water temperature. So, here's our scale for sea surface temperature. So 30 degrees Celsius is kind of this warm red, and then anything above, 20, 25, 26 degrees Celsius is really ripe for tropical development. And you can see kind of in this area, with Gordon sitting out here, it's just going over this bath water. You may hear some meteorologists talk about bath water and how it's so warm. It's like something you would enjoy if you were taking a bath as well. It's just what tropical systems love, that deep column of warm water to draw off of the moisture and kind of really intensify. So that condition is in its favor, but with that wind shear and also moving so quick, it shouldn't have a ton of time to intensify a whole lot. And kind of throwing all of that together in summary, this is the another view you can look at here, and this will kind of put all those together. Here's the forecast track again, and then we can overlay the sea surface temperature here, and we can also look at the, let's see if I can find it here, the shear, the wind shear. So actually I'm going to take this back off because that's kind of messy. I wonder if I can get this to go back away if I have it on. Maybe not, but anyway, you can it's really cluttered now to see, but as the storm moves over this way, you see this kind of red contour of the 25 and 35 knot shear, and that's something that tropical systems really do not, they do not do well against. They do not like that. So as it moves into here, this is expected to drift a little bit west, but it should be enough to kind of keep Tropical Storm Gordon at bay intensity-wise and keep it at a minimal level hurricane. So that's certainly good news, but overall, it's still something to watch and keep an eye on, because the Gulf of Mexico is some of the warmest water around, and things can change rather quickly. So that's about all I have on Gordon right now, and I wanted to switch over to Florence, and this visible satellite just kind of cut out a few, maybe a few frames ago, a few hours ago, because the sunset line, this is the terminator right here for night and day, and Tropical Storm Florence, you should be able to pick it out pretty easily on here. It's right in here. Currently has maximum sustained winds of 70 miles per hour, and it's going to kind of linger around that strength for the coming days, and is really not going to be a story until it approaches, it moves west and approaches kind of a pivotal moment in its track, which I'll show you in a minute, which may determine if it curves back out to sea and is just a fish storm, or if it actually does have any impact on North Carolina or the coast. So I just wanted to show you this, and you can switch over to infrared view as well. I'll post all of these links so you can view, and you can very clearly see right here it has a pretty healthy outflow going. It looks pretty ventilated, you could say, but it's battling some Saharan dust off of here, and it's also battling just some unfavorable conditions. It's not in the warmest of waters in the Atlantic, so it's just kind of hovering around that minimal hurricane threshold, I should say. So it should kind of keep around there for about 5 or so more days, and then it becomes a real important factor in its forecast, which I'll touch on here. So going back to here, I want to look at the National Hurricane Center forecast for Florence. So it's way out here in the middle of the Atlantic, and this is its forecast cone. So each of these dots are about 12 hours apart, and then 2 p.m. Saturday, so on September the 8th, about 5 days away, it's kind of in this. And remember, this is the cone of uncertainty. This is where it's expected to go, but after this, a lot of model guidance wants to take it out this way. Some of it wants to shoot it back this way. Some of it wants to take it to Bermuda, and that's all a factor of the environment around it, which is going to influence, which is what I want to show here on Tropical Tidbits, a model site. So this is 500 millibar height anomaly. So about halfway up the atmosphere, I'm showing you, geopotential height, or kind of pressure difference. You can think of it as the warmer colors are higher up, the bluer colors are farther down. And if you have bluer colors, that's going to, that's going to be what pushes things. The ridge is kind of an open door. So this, up here, this is indicating Florence right here. And, this is, if Florence was right here, it would be an open invitation to just come into the coast with this ridge here. But if this trough digs down, down here, that's going to be what pushes off. You may hear sometimes, a cold front pushes the storm out to sea, but that's going to be the real, crux in this forecast. So if I go forward in time here in increments of about 6 hours, you can see, down here, Florence is this little feature here. We still have this ridge, which is what's making us so hot here in North Carolina. That the air is sinking. It's kind of a dome of high pressure dominating our weather over here. So that's why it's so hot. And Florence continues trekking west-northwest. But then the GFS model, the American model global forecast system, wants to kind of phase it into this trough here, this upper level trough, and take it out to sea, and it becomes a part of that. And the intensity of Florence is also key at that point, because like I just mentioned, weaker storms are going to be heavily influenced by other environmental factors. But if the storm is stronger, it kind of can have a mind of its own and can kind of battle against, the trough and can make it, harder to be picked up. So that's also a key, and that's the American model. But of course, it's not a forecast unless you have, a differing idea. So here, the European model actually weakens Florence to where it doesn't even really register on here anymore. And then it picks it back up at this point, and this is indicating Florence, and it completely misses this trough, and it wants to spit Florence out and take it to a further west track, which is a little bit of an absurd forecast for now. Not sure how much you want to put into that. I mean, this is several days out, but it takes Florence out this way. So the key is going to be what happens with this feature here, and that'll that's going to change over the coming days, the speed of how it's going on land. So altogether, it's really going to depend on the strength of the system, when it gets there, when this feature comes off of land. So there's a lot of factors. It's over 5 days out. There is pretty much zero confidence in any forecast beyond there, and it's nonsensical to try to make a forecast beyond 5 days, because you just don't know. I mean, the weather models are not that sophisticated. You're never going to know what happens 5 days out exactly. So, and when it comes to the track, you have to know exactly to know impacts. But it's just something to watch, and as Tropical Storm Gordon goes away, our focus will shift over to Florence, because by then, 2 a.m. Wednesday, it'll be a little bit closer, and the picture may become a little more clear where it's expected to go with those factors. But in the meantime, here in North Carolina, we're going to be baking in a very stagnant pattern of lower 90s for highs, lower 70s for lows, dew points in the 70s. It's going to be muggy and warm because of that high pressure ridge that I was showing here. If I back up in time here, because of this ridge is why we're having the weather we are now, and it's so strong. If it's too strong, it's going to hinder the development of other features around it, which could eventually steer Florence out. So it's all something to watch. It's a complicated forecast, as is usually the case with the tropical realm of meteorology. But right now the main story is Tropical Storm Gordon down on the coast, and then we'll worry about Florence as it gets a little bit closer. Hopefully it curves back out to sea. It's not an issue, but the door is open for Florence, theoretically, for an East Coast impact. So we have to keep that in mind over the next few days. But for the next week ahead, no impact North Carolina from the tropical world. We'll just be warm and muggy. For the next week, we will be fine. Don't have to worry about anything. But, it's always good to have a plan in place and preparations in place. Now is the time to do that, instead of, if Florence does make a turn to the East Coast and you have, friends or family along the eastern seaboard up here, don't panic and prepare, then. The time is to prepare now, prepare for the worst, hope for the best. And that's kind of a mantra that I live by, and try to, I need to get my hurricane emergency kit together. With Hurricane Matthew a few years ago, I lost power for several days, and I wasn't prepared for that. It's just in modern life, we don't think about that, but you always have to be prepared, because the weather is always going to win, and you have to be prepared for that. So getting off my soapbox now, just be prepared. Keep an eye on the forecast. We'll try to do a forecast or an update video tomorrow when Gordon is out over the Gulf of Mexico, and to see what Florence does. But altogether, the tropics are waking up. Models even have more waves coming off of Africa and turning into a couple of more storms. So it is the active season. It's the time of year we do this kind of stuff. We watch for these storms. So all something we have to keep an eye on over the next coming days. And, we'll have to deal with this for the rest of September and through the fall. So until then, until the next video, stay safe, and be sure to check the official National Hurricane Center forecast for the accurate information, the most timely information. And I will be posting on Facebook and Twitter as often as possible with relevant information to keep you updated about these storms. So for now, stay safe, and I will see you later. Thanks.